Moleskine or Amazon Basics? Which notebook is better and worth the price paid? Let's find out with a direct comparison. Hello there, my name is Linda, also known as Tortagialla around the internet. I love creative journaling and all things stationery, and today I wanted to share a look into the Moleskine Classic Notebook and compare head-to-head with the Amazon Basics notebook and see which one comes out on top. I have purchased both these notebooks myself, and the one on the right is the Amazon Basics notebook that I already opened. It was packaged in plastic and it had a white label that said what it was, but it doesn't have any other extras or branding included. The Moleskine I'm going to unwrap right now, and it's also wrapped in plastic, but the branding information is an actual paper belly band that is wrapped around the notebook. It obviously includes the general information and details of what this notebook is. Both notebooks are roughly 13 by 21 centimeters. It's basically an A5 slim, so not fully as wide as a true A5 sized notebook like many of the bullet journals out there. These notebooks, they both have 240 pages or 120 sheets of paper inside. They are both hardcover versions, and I bought the grid page variation. There's also lined and blank versions available. So the Moleskine has this paper branding, and the inside of it has sort of like journaling prompts that give ideas on what you can document in your notebook. So it's like a nice little touch to encourage like the use of your notebook. Obviously, Moleskine has like a whole community of users, so their marketing is just on a different level, of course. And looking at the label of the Moleskine, and I also will double check the Amazon Basics as well. But both of the notebooks are made in China, so they're both made in China, and really right off the bat, like they look very similar on the outside, at least from afar. Like I doubt anyone would be able to tell the difference from afar. They're just both, black hardcover notebooks. And there are probably many variations and brands that, might look similar. Here you can see that the Amazon Basics, it seems just slightly more thick than the Moleskine if you put them side by side. But they both have elastic closure included, and it might be hard to see in the video, but when I compared, the Moleskine elastic is just like a millimeter, a hair wider than the Amazon Basics version. Now, the covers themselves, they're black hard covers, but they do not feel the same. The Moleskine on the left is definitely more slick and sort of like plasticky feeling, smooth. And the Amazon Basics on the right, it almost has like a matte, sort of like papery, rougher feel to it. And if you open them up now, you can see that the Moleskine has its classic in case of lost page and branding, whereas the Amazon Basics is just completely blank, no branding whatsoever. You can already see that the Moleskine has a much more creamy colored page. It's their classic 70 GSM ivory paper color. And of course, I have the grid page version, so the rest of the pages are just all grid pages. I could not find information on the Amazon Basics, like exactly what is the GSM of the paper, but it does feel maybe just a tad bit more. Maybe it's just like printer paper, like 80 GSM, something like that. But yeah, the rest of the notebooks, just all grid pages. And the printed grid on the Moleskine version, it definitely looks softer looking, whereas the Amazon Basics grid, it seems to be printed like maybe a smudge thicker, the lines, and so a bit more harsh looking. And the Moleskine paper also feels smoother to the touch, and the Amazon Basics is like slightly rougher, slight, like very slight, a bit of tooth to it. And they both have the back pocket to store items, and you can see the Moleskine. I might have gotten lucky because I have the light blue quality control sticker, and that is supposed to mean that the paper is pretty good. So we will see when we get to the pen tests. And the Amazon Basics has the same back pocket design, nothing inside, and the back covers of the notebook have the logo branding on the very, very bottom. And you can see that the elastic on the Amazon Basics is quite taut, whereas the Moleskine is already like pretty loose. And both notebooks have a ribbon bookmark inside. So the ribbon bookmark, it's just like a it's a small, thin ribbon like in most notebooks, and I can't really tell the difference to say if either one is better or worse. They both just seem pretty similar, different colors. And I don't know if the color changes depending on the page type that you get for the notebook, but yeah, just regular ribbons. Doesn't seem like anything special or different. And of course, I should mention that the very last page of the Moleskine notebook has their history sort of branding information printed on that very back cover page, which is classic in all of the Moleskine notebooks. But otherwise, the Amazon Basics notebook is basically empty. There's like no branding, nothing printed except for, the grid pages, but nothing except for that small Amazon Basics logo on the back bottom cover. But, let's get to the pen test, because that will really give us useful information on what pens you can use and what you can do in these notebooks. So I'm going to test with a bunch of fountain pens and gel pens that I own and usually use. And I'm just considering my usual set whenever I do pen test samples, whenever I get a new notebook or paper, from like a super thick 1.1 stub nib to extra fines, which is what I actually use normally, and also some gel pens and ballpoint and a brush pen. So I'm just going to test both notebooks on a page and be able to compare them sort of side by side. And I'm going to skip ahead and just show you the results because it's sort of, just tedious looking at me write. I wish that I could share like actual footage of like the sound, because some people say they like to hear how the pen performs on the actual paper, but there's too much noise going on, so it didn't work out for this video, which is why I'm just going to skip ahead and show you the results of when I've done the pen test on both notebooks with the same exact pens and inks, and then I can see them side by side to really do a comparison of Moleskine versus Amazon Basics notebook. So you can see that I've written on both notebooks with the same pens, and there's actually no feathering on either notebook. So both Moleskine and Amazon Basics are performing similarly in terms of the experience when you're writing. When you flip over to the back, of course, you can see that there is ghosting on both notebooks, but the stub nib is the one that has bled through some on the Amazon Basics notebook. There might be like a few points and lines with the stub nib also bleeding through in the Moleskine, and also the Pilot. These are like the notorious offenders in my collection, because the Eco Twisby with its 1.1 stub nib is just, so broad, so much ink on the paper. And then I have this Pilot Metropolitan Medium, but it has this ink, the Pilot Iro Shizuku Syo. It's just like a really wet ink in my, experience, so it does cause issues on some papers. But, generally I'm impressed, because with both notebooks, what I usually use, like extra fine fountain pens and gel pens, and they work fine, in this notebook. And even the brush pen, it did not bleed through. So that's like a Tombow Fudeno Suke brush pen, and I use that for drawing oftentimes. So that works in both of these notebooks. And I know that pen tests, the results can vary because there are so many combinations, right? The paper, the pen, the nib, the ink, and, each acts as a different variable, and it can really change the results. But on the general, it seems like both notebooks are taking all kinds of pen types. So I would say very similar performance, although the Moleskine is probably slightly better in this case, because of that bleed through issue for the super broad pens. Like if you have a tendency to rest your pen or pause in certain spots when you write, the ink can pool up. So these papers, they're not going to hold up to that kind of habit. You will definitely have bleed through issues. But I think for general writing circumstances, or if you don't usually use such broad pen nibs, it seems like both notebooks are performing similarly. And this is actually surprising to me because I expected the Amazon Basics to have much worse paper since it's a lot cheaper. Now, if you look more closely at the details of the notebook construction themselves, the corners, the edges of the notebooks, the lining inside, you will see that the Moleskine is definitely higher quality. The Amazon Basics, it has like noticeable misaligned corners, like, bumped edges, like folded, in the cover outside. Even some of the liner paper on the inside sort of like roughly cut. It looks almost torn, or like there was a bad blade when they were cutting the paper in the factory. It's not surprising to me, sort of expected because it's lower quality, less like craftsmanship in general. And of course, I would expect the Moleskine to be better made because you are paying such a higher price. And by the way, I never had realized this before, but the Moleskine hardcovers have 240 pages, but the soft covers, supposedly the same version, just the soft cover version, it will only have 192 pages. So did you know this before? I don't know why I never realized this. So I don't know if Moleskine users have always known this difference, but it must have something to do with the construction of the covers, the binding of the book. The Amazon Basics notebook in this particular size, it only comes in hardcover. I could not find it as a softcover notebook. They seem to only have softcover for like undated planners or a much larger sized type of blank notebook or lined notebook. And I suspect that depending on your country, your marketplace, there might be variations on what is offered. So you just have to read up on the description and make sure you're buying what you expect. So we all know that Moleskines have a pretty hefty price tag retail, and the Amazon Basics is much cheaper, especially if you watch out for sales, Prime Day and such. You literally can get this notebook for $5. Of course, Moleskines also go on sale from time to time, but generally it's still a much higher price tag, unless you're lucky enough to find it maybe secondhand or get a deal somewhere. Although these two notebooks are very similar in look and they do perform similarly, there are differences, and it sort of depends if those differences matter to you. Like some might say the plastic feel of the Moleskine cover is a con because they don't like, that plastic cheap feel, but others might say no, it's a pro because it'll be easier to wipe off and clean your notebook. Whereas the Amazon Basics, like sort of semi-matte feel, it probably gets dirty easier, like collect dust or maybe fur if you have like a pet and that is an issue. The Moleskine elastic is also pretty loose already, so I suppose it might get stretched out faster over time compared to the Amazon Basics, but that is just an assumption, of course. It has to be tested over time. And then there's the color of the paper and the feel. That is very much a personal preference, so I will definitely have to use these notebooks to see how they hold up to wear and tear over time as well, to report back. But for now, which notebook wins? Like, which one is better according to you? I actually say it depends. So it really depends on what you are using the notebook for. I would say that if you need a notebook for writing notes and working things out, brainstorming, but you're probably not going to keep these pages, or you're not going to keep it long term, and it's not like a memory keeping or like documentation kind of thing, then you should go for the cheaper version, because the Amazon Basics, I mean, you could buy a whole bunch and have the freedom to use as many pages as you want. Whereas for something more important and to be kept long term, you might want to invest in better quality, because the Moleskine does seem to be made better construction-wise. And finally, I want to include a picture of both notebooks. There's the Moleskine on top and the Amazon Basics in the middle, and then a white sheet of my Fabriano multi-paper. It's 100 GSM paper that I usually use for digital printing, like color stuff, because I wanted to show you that even though the Moleskine is ivory colored, the Amazon Basics is also slightly off-white. It's just not as ivory or creamy as the Moleskine, but when you put it side by side, you can see that it's not bright white paper. So, what do you think? Who do you think wins? I definitely think it depends. It depends what you want to use the notebook for. But I am pleasantly surprised that they both perform pretty well. So, if you're on a budget, then just go for the Amazon Basics, and, you'll still be able to use it. And from afar, like I said, it just looks like a classic black hardcover notebook. Yeah, let me know down in the comments what you think. I hope you enjoyed seeing this comparison. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I would really appreciate your likes and comments as it helps me here on YouTube. And if you would like to support me directly, I am a graphic designer. I design digital printables for journaling and paper crafting. I'm building my community on Ko-fi, so you can support me there by signing up for the membership and getting printable downloads. Or you can just drop a one-time tip. I post there every Friday, so check out the link in the description for more information. I also have a blog at tortagialla.com, and I've been posting free digital printables there for years and years. So you can go out and just immediately download free digital papers to try in your creative journaling. I really appreciate you watching and supporting me here. Thank you again, and until next time, bye.